Hey everybody, welcome back to yet another Jeep video on Chuck's 3D printing channel. And you know what, that's okay. A lot of you have asked me if I'm going to get back to 3D printing. And the answer is yes, absolutely. We're headed up toward 90-degree temperatures by the end of next week. Today is Saturday, so by the end of next week, we're going to be in the 90s. And when it gets up into the mid to upper 90s, that's when I start phasing out any kind of outside work. So I need to press on and get this done on the Jeep. The wife has some honeydew stuff for me outside, and I would really like to get the front of my house painted. And I got some tools and equipment for that. I may do quickie tests on that. I have bought some new tools and stuff that I've planned on using once, and I've tested them and I found they're so good. You ever bought something inexpensive and you think, well, you know what? I know it's probably crap, but if it just gets this one job done, I'll be happy. And then you use it and it's really good, and you kind of want to spread the news around. So I may have a quickie review of 3 or 4 tools I've bought too here recently. So what I have here today, and if I sound funny, it's because my allergies are going batshit crazy and I'm out of allergy meds, so bear with me a bit there, will you? What I have here today is the last, I think, of the parts I'm going to put in the Jeep before the hot weather hits. And as some of you know, I was having problems sourcing parts. Like, I've had 2 headlight switches and none of them work correctly. I think I went through 3 wiper switches and gave up and just put the original one back in, which does work after I hosed it down with contact cleaner. But the headlight switch was in some pretty bad shape. All the plastic, the phenolic block where the plug-in was broken away, and the contacts were horrible. So I had 2 of them, none of them worked. One of my subscribers named Dave contacted me. He's from Little Rock, Arkansas. He is a part specialist and he offered to source these parts for me, and he did, and I paid for them, but he sourced them for me. He said if you guys want more information about who he is, what he does, to let me know and I can provide it. But anyway, so the first thing we have is a headlight switch from Crown Automotive. And it looks nice, it moves really smooth. Where the other one, you turned it, run the lights up and down, and it was grindy. The contacts were bent, and the parking lights would never turn off on it. So I had a couple like that one, which honestly hardly worked at all, and then I had the one the contacts wouldn't turn off on. So he got me this one. This is how they come. They do not come with a stock or a mounting nut, so if you're restoring an old Jeep where the switches are missing completely, you'll have to buy a stock, a mounting nut, and a knob. But I have all of that here out of my old one. This one's only minimally bent, and I did straighten it a bit, and it should just kind of go in there and lock in like that. Oops, didn't lock in, did it? Let me push the button. There's a button on the bottom. You push to release it. And up there it went. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I got a nice billet knob to put on it. I'll put that on it. We'll get it mounted. We'll get it tested. And then there's the visors. And these visors are from RT Off-Road. And I checked the part number on these myself. These are supposed to fit from a 59. So the other thing I got was a fuel tank sending unit. And again, this is probably the Crown, this is the Crown Automotive part. Let me give you part numbers for all this stuff in case you guys are interested. There's the fuel tank sending unit, part number. Here is the headlight switch part number. And these are the vent hoses that go on the fuel tank, because I know those are original and are probably going to be rotted. Even though I've had that gas tank out of there, I think 3 times previously, I doubt I ever replaced those. So here are the part number for the vent hoses from Crown Automotive. So when I got this sending unit, this arm was bent completely out, and this isn't the fault of Dave who got them for me. This is the fault of the shipper or the manufacturer, because the box was factory sealed, factory stapled shut. So I bent it back around, but I noticed it still went when you turned it, and I wasn't getting any proper ohms reading. It was reading 0 on me no matter where it was set, even after I put it back in place. So being impatient, because that's the time of year I've reached, I bent the little mounting tabs open. I took the cover plate off. I saw the little copper wiper was on the wrong side of the resistor block. I pulled it all apart. I put it back together correctly. I tested all the resistances, and now I'm getting the correct resistances, or very, very close to it. I think the correct resistances are 7 to 60, and I'm getting about 5 to 58, which is good enough for me. Now, this here, I will not put in another plastic float, because one or two of the ones that failed on me was because the plastic float sunk and filled up with gas, and then they don't work anymore. I'm pretty sure the one that's in it now has the brass float. If it does and it's not sunk, I'm going to put it on. If it has a plastic float, or if the brass float is sunk, I'm going to have to order another float. But for today, let's get the headlight switch in and get it tested, make sure it works. Okay, headlight switch is in and mounted. Knob is on. I got some nice feeling action there. I can see the LED lights turning on. The LEDs do not dim in the instruments that I put in. They are not dimmable, so they are all the way on until one point, then they are all the way off. That's fine. The instrument lights on these things are so dim, I don't know why you'd want to dim them further anyway, but nonetheless, there it is. But anyway, let's check this to see if it works. The old one, the other one I had, in fact, the other two I have, the parking lights wouldn't turn off. So with everything off, let's make sure we're off. Okay, I got no lights. That's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Let's try parking lights. There's parking lights. Parking lights are on. Yay. Let's try headlights. Headlights. And the headlights are on. Great. That is great. Thanks, Dave. I was worried about that because, okay, as usual, trial and tribulations are going on with the fuel tank sending unit. In order to get the sending unit out of this, you have to pull the fuel tank. In order to pull the fuel tank, you have to drop the skid plate that protects the fuel tank. In order to do that, I had to pull my tube bumper off. Now, I made this tube bumper a long time ago when I managed an exhaust shop. That's this 3-inch exhaust tubing, and as you can see, it's rusted out all along the bottom, so it's not going back in. Oh, you can see the window regulators I put in my wife's Cadillac. I put one window regulator in and I was all done, and I tested the other windows, and when I tested one of the other windows, its regulator broke. So 2 window regulators I got to do. That was loads of fun. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, you know what? At some point in time, you got to admit to yourself that you're getting old enough. You don't want to be crawling under vehicles in the dirt anymore. And I think at 64, I'm probably right about there. So as much as I don't want to do it, I'm thinking I'm going to just cut a hole in the floor so I can access this from the bottom. Not this time. I'm obviously not going to cut a hole in the bottom while the fuel tank is in it. So I am going to pull the fuel tank out. And then I think I'm going to pull the back seat and oh God, I really don't want to do that. I don't know. Have to think about it. Anyway, I'll get the tank out and I'll think about it. So the fuel tank's out. I think you guys might find it interesting to see why it stopped working. Now, I haven't tested it to make sure the resistances are good, but here's the new one. Notice it's got a float on the end of it. Here's the old one. Float's not there. And you'll notice a couple things. One, it was a brass float. That is a piece of it right there. And two, someone, which would have been me, safety wired it in place, because I have had floats bang out, come loose from the arm. But that is my brass float, or the remains of my brass float right there. And the rest is going to be in the bottom of the tank. The tank is shockingly enough, not all that rusty. I am going to put some fresh gas in it and probably a couple handfuls of gravel and shake it around, try and clean it out a bit. But yeah, now I don't have a brass float. Now I'm not sure if I should put a brass float back in it, because I don't know why it did that. I may just go ahead and stick with the plastic one and put some safety wire on it, and I am absolutely going to cut an access panel in the floor. I don't want to, but I'm never doing this again, so I am absolutely going to do that, and I'll hate myself for it, but if I ever have to replace this again, and I will, because I plan on owning this for as long as I can continue to drive. I'm only 64, so probably at least another 15 to 16 years or so. And yeah, I ain't doing this again. Okay, with the fuel tank out, I have power washed the outside of it. I see no reason not to reuse this fuel tank. The inside has a small amount of rust. I don't know if you can see in there. It's got some rust and dirt, but nothing major. The skid plate is undamaged, so the tank is undamaged under it. There was probably 8 or 9 gallons of gas in it, so I know it doesn't leak. I just want to get it cleaned out a bit. So I'm just going to leave the gallon of vinegar in it for a day, 24 hours, sloshing it around every now and again to make sure everything's wet. Then we will clean it out with water and maybe a little bit of baking soda to kill the acid in the vinegar. And I think that's all this tank's going to need. In the meantime, I'm going to get that hole cut. Okay, so here we are under the Jeep, and as you can see, here is the back mount for the seat belt seat right here. And interestingly enough, and I taped my hoses back on so that I could kind of see, because I cut them because I couldn't get them to come off with the tank hanging. But I taped them back up where they were so you could kind of, or at least I could kind of see where the sending unit is. And if you look, it's almost directly above this flat spot. And it's interesting, these corrugations, they left a spot with no center corrugation. The corrugation comes up to here, stops, is flat, and then starts again here. And you can see it's back there. So they gave this nice flat spot almost like, and if you look on the inside, it's almost like they intended there to be a trapdoor there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill, I think I'm going to drill 4 quarters through the bottom so I know where I'm at. And then I'm going to go up above and I'm going to cut that piece out. I don't want to take these strengthening ribs out if I can help it, and I don't think it's necessary. And we're going to see where a lot of guys cut this whole big square here out. I really think that's kind of overkill. But another thing to consider, if I cut this out and it's too small and I get the tank back in, at least the tank will be empty, there won't be gas in it, and I can widen it without worrying about setting the entire vehicle on fire. I also bought some flat bar, some 1/8" flat bar, and I'm going to put a flange around it. And now that I'm looking at it under here, I'm not really sure that's necessary. But anyway, it's pretty obvious that that is where the sending unit lives, right in the middle of that flat spot. So I'm going to get this area cut out. Okay, I got my hole cut. There it is. I cut it with the angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. Then I put a flap wheel on it, and I went all around it so you could touch it without slicing your hands open. And then I went over it with a little bit of satin black paint. And if you look and see at these are my hoses that go on top of the sending unit, and that's right where they go. And that is, I don't know if I could hit it any better than that. I am going to hope that that works. If not, when I get the tank back in, I'll be able to adjust it as needed. My original plan was to put a flange around in underneath that would stick out a little bit that I could screw or pop rivet a flush trapdoor on. But the more I look at it, the more I think that I don't think that's what I'm going to do. I've got some 1/8" thick aluminum plate, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it bigger, and I'm just going to pop rivet it over the top. The pop rivets are nearly flush. This box sits in the bottom, and these ribs will hold it up off of my plate. And you know what? Hopefully I'll never need to take that plate off of there. And if I do, you know, 6 or 8 pop rivets are very, very easy to drill out. I've drilled out more pop rivets in my life than you can possibly imagine when I worked for that company that built service station canopies. So I think I'm going to end this video for here. I'm going to have to wait a day to drain the vinegar out of the gas tank and clean it, and I'm probably not going to get back to that until the weekend. So let's end this one here, and we'll come back and we'll finish it up. Thanks guys for watching. Bye for now.